Hey, how's it going? I'm Nino, and we're going to give a try at a vermicompost worm composting bin. So I've done this before. In fact, these plastic bins I've had for probably 10 years or so. You know, when I moved and that sort of thing, I just kind of lost some interest in the worm bin just because I wasn't really home very much and that sort of thing. But I'm going to be doing it, you know, getting it back up and going again. So I'm going to make a couple of small changes. I'm going to show you how it's done, and we'll see if I get it done well. There was a point in time when I was actually actively taking care of these guys, like, you know, every day, and yeah, I guess I didn't really need daily maintenance, maybe weekly, and so it worked out really well for a while. So I've got to get worms. I've got my dog, hey buddy, and so yeah, we're going to try and get this thing up and going again. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do a few things differently. One thing that's different than the last time that I did it is I'm going to use what's called coconut coir, C-O-I-R, and it is basically the husk of the coconut, and it works as a really good bedding. It absorbs a lot of moisture. I actually just took one of the bricks, so this is what the bricks look like, and that brick turned into basically a bucket full of this stuff that I rinsed out best as I could. It's supposed to be already rinsed, supposed to be low salt, but I made sure to try and rinse it best as I could before I'm using it, because it is in fact coconuts. They are by the ocean, they absorb salt, and so that husk can really get a lot of salt in it, and well, osmosis. Worms don't really like the action of osmosis too much, especially with them breathing through their skin. Worms are pretty cool. The red wigglers, and they have 7 hearts and that whole thing, and there's some pretty cool things about them. But let's kind of get into this. By the way, I'm kind of looking up into a little bit of the environmental impact of the coconut coir. So it's used as a gardening product like peat moss. Peat moss is something that comes from something that's decomposed in the ground. It's old decomposed material, and it's something that is thousands, if not millions of years in the making, and so it's not necessarily completely sustainable, but it depends on what part of the world. So most of our peat in this area in the United States, we get ours from Canada, and the areas of Canada, those, especially with some global warming issues, plenty of peat is being exposed as time goes on. And in fact, Canada's even said that there's plenty of decomposing material to replenish the peat that's being taken up. So the environmental impact of peat isn't so bad here in the States, so why use the coconut coir? It absorbs moisture much more, although the peat moss has more nutrient material for your garden, and the coconut absorbs moisture like crazy. I am very impressed as to just how much water it's able to retain, so just didn't play with it for a few seconds. So here is the worm compost bin system. I use a 3-tiered system. Here is my lid. I'm going to actually put some bigger holes in the lid. You can see some small holes here that I had done before, but I'm going to put some bigger holes, and so that's going to do a couple things. One, obviously it's going to create some aeration, but also the worms don't like sunlight, and I don't really want them trying to escape, so that's going to prevent them from doing that and let them kind of stay in. Also, I do put like sort of a bit of a topper on top to try and protect them a little bit and prevent them from coming up too much. So I have 4 bins total. The bottom bin is the only one that is a deeper bin. The rest are a bit bigger. You'll notice that in this bin I have some holes drilled here. This is probably enough to get the aeration, although I could probably drill a few more. I don't want to go all the way down because there will be some seepage of liquid that will drain down to the bottom. I could, although I probably don't have to, I could put a tap of some kind, you know, like from those drink dispensers. I could put a tap here just to be able to drain off that liquid. Some people say that you can use it in your garden, some people not. I tried it in the past and it did not work out well. I think that the pH can be a bit off on it, so I think you have to dilute it very greatly. But it's probably good in terms of nitrogen levels and things like that, but I cannot confirm too much on that. But the compost that is developed is known as worm castings. It's basically worm poop. And so what they do is the worms will sort of eat your compost material, like banana peels, okay? But do they really eat the banana peels? Actually, no. So my understanding is that there is, got a sticker, can't have a sticker. So my understanding is that essentially there's these bacteria and yeast that will break down, and then the worms then eat that. So the worms help keep this symbiotic relationship going on and help keep things in this nice controlled environment, because things don't want to become too, you don't want too much fungal growth, and it helps the bacteria actually do their job. So I've got these different bins, and what's going to happen is I'm going to really just start off with one bin. I could just have one bin, or I could have all three bins and just use the top one. And what will happen is I'll put the worms in, you put the food on the top, and they will rise to the top to eat, and after 3 or 4 months this bin will be pretty much composted. And what I will do is I will shift that one to the bottom and then bring an empty one to the top, and I'll put some food in it, put some bedding, and the worms will already come through. They will on their own come through the holes that will be drilled in the bottom of the bin. I have some holes, but I realize that it's not enough, so I'm going to drill more holes. And so they'll come up through the holes, and they will go towards that new layer. And then by the time the top bin gets to the bottom bin, then that bottom bin will be just compost, just castings, and be basically devoid of worms. If there is still any worms in it, I have learned that the trick to do is to get out on some sort of like bench and just spread the worms out, make a fairly thin layer, about 1 inch thick, and the worms will go to the bottom. You can just kind of scrape off the top castings and be able to collect the castings, and then you'll have virtually concentrated worms in the bottom that you can put back in your bin. Don't put the worms in your garden, even though some people say to, but those people don't know that worms are in fact invasive species. And so for your garden, because you are putting your plants down and rooting them, that might be fine for your garden. However, for saplings and tree, certain species of tree like poplar, those seedlings aren't able to get the nutrients that are at the top. And so what worms will do is they will take the nutrients that are at the top and they'll mix them with the rest of the soil, which is bad for some seedlings which need this nutrients at the top because they don't have deep roots. And so it actually causes much of the forest to then become devoid of life, of young growth, because they don't get that nutrients from the top layer. So let's get into the worm bin. So I've got holes in each of these, obviously except for the bottom one, just holes here in order to have aeration. I'm going to put more holes here, and like I said, and then we'll get into, we'll actually get into like putting the worms in. So let's go ahead and put some more holes in these guys. Let's do it. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step where we put some worms in. So what we want to do is we want to get some of the coconut core here. This is going to be our bedding. We don't need to go crazy with it. And as far as moisture goes, I could probably squeeze out some of the moisture. You can see just how much moisture this stuff holds. But I think that since a lot of the other stuff I'm not putting in, a lot of the other stuff I'm putting in is going to be dry, you know what, I should probably take out some of the moisture, because the fruit and stuff that you put in has moisture on its own. I'm gonna, there we go. Squeeze out some more of the moisture. I don't want too much for these guys. You want something that is sort of moist, but certainly not wet. Something else I'm going to get is I'm going to get some shredded paper, and I'm also going to try and get some soil that has some grit in there. Some eggshells will work well, and I'll get some of those. So let me go ahead and get those, and we'll take care of that. All right, so luckily, well, not necessarily luckily, but when I was sent the worms, they sent it actually in some coconut coir, which is really nice, and they also gave some shredded paper as well, so I'm going to throw some of that in. So when I had done this the first time around, I did not use any of the coconut stuff because that just wasn't even a thing that was on my radar, and I just used bedding and cardboard, and it's fine, you know. But you know, in doing some research and starting this over again, I found that the coconut coir works really nicely in terms of being able to moderate the moisture nicely. You know, if you want to put tomatoes in here, tomatoes hold a lot of juice, obviously, and it can really oversaturate the system, and you do not want that. So if liquid does build up in this bottom one, that's kind of an indication that it's just too wet, and so you need to kind of dry out the system. Whenever you feed them, you should probably add some more bedding, and let's get this mixed up here. And I kind of feel like I probably could have taken out even more of the moisture, to be honest. But it'll probably be okay. So I'm going to put some old potting soil in here. That'll probably help take up some of the moisture. So it's going to have some grit to it. Get that mixed up, and I have some eggshells. I'm going to grind those up. I also see a spider in there. I'm going to take him out so he can live. Oh, and the eggshells to be good. So the calcium is really good for the worms, for the calcium, and just the grit itself. It helps them digest. So try and break that up a little bit. What would be even better if you have like an old like coffee grinder. Putting it in that would really be good for them, but this should be sufficient. I'll be able to chomp away at little bits of it. I think I'm going to put even more paper in there. Help take up some of that moisture that I've got in the coconut coir. Okay. Banana peel. And worms. Let's take a look at these guys. Hopefully they're still alive. Back them in. Look at all that coconut coir that they gave me. Isn't that awesome? Alright, look at these guys. They tend to clump up into one big grouping. Look at that. Look at cute little guys. And they are really good self-moderators in terms of population. So if you're not putting enough food in, then you're not going to have as many worms, and they'll just not procreate as much. If you put more food in, they will start to procreate more in order to be able to consume more. But don't overdo it. People say that they can consume their weight in food per day, but to me that's not true. Especially not until it is a very well established system. So supposedly this is a pound of worms. Got it from Buckeye Farms, I believe. You know, I like the way they packaged it. I'm not sure if I really agree that it's truly a pound of worms, because typically you'd have 1,000 worms per pound, but maybe they're adding in that coconut coir in terms of their weight, but whatever. This should be able to get me started, and I'm just going to put in the 2 banana peels to start, and I'm not even going to put anything else in for at least a few days. Especially after shipping, you know, they're kind of like, you know, in shock a little bit, so they need time to reestablish. The worst thing you can do is overfeed them, and the worst thing you can do besides that is to let there be too much moisture. And since the food has a lot of moisture in it, those two things usually go hand in hand. So you want to put foods in there that are going to be dry, especially at first. Banana peels are great because they're low in that moisture content. Don't put any tomatoes in right away. Don't put any onions ever. Don't put any sort of meat ever. Don't put anything that's too spicy, and you know, certainly no dairy products in there. Let's see, what else? I know I'm missing something. No onion. Nothing spicy. Oh, and no citrus. so you can't put any citrus peels in there either. Like I said, as I keep putting food on top, from here on out I'll pretty much put the food on top. In fact, I should probably put this a little bit higher. I don't want them to, because they like to be top feeders, and so what they'll do is they'll come to the top, they'll feed, and all the compost will essentially go to the bottom. And as I put more food, they will keep coming up to the top, and eventually, this will probably take about 3 months for this bin to be up to about this level with castings, and then I'll put this bin down to the next level down. I'll put another bin up top, put food and bedding in it that will come up to the top, and by the time that this bin gets down to the bottom, which will be a while from now, it'll probably be it's what, spring, it's, April. This probably won't be until fall that I can really harvest that bottom bin for castings, but it will be very rich in gardening material, and actually maybe you know, if I can really get these things going, if I feed them consistently, then I can probably actually have something sooner than that. But I don't want to go too hard on them too fast. I want to be nice and easy, and so I can't just willy-nilly just start throwing things in there. So I'm going to go easy on them to start, and I'll introduce more and more food as time goes on. And one thing that I do on top is I will put something on top. What I've in fact, you could put newspaper up top, and I'll show you what I use for the top. This is actually what I've used in the past. This is actually just a washable filter media for a furnace that I had lying around years ago, and this seemed to work out well, so I just cut it to shape, and you know, it just kind of helps keep everything in. Otherwise, you could use newspaper to kind of cover them up, but I'll see if this works again, and just, that's it. Just throw that on top. It's plenty breathable, which is something I like about it, and yeah, that's about it. I'm going to put this guy up top. I'm going to drill a few more holes so that way there's more light. And I actually keep this thing in my basement. If you do it right, it won't smell. So that's vermicomposting in a nutshell. Nutshell. That's it. You have a good one.